It's a pleasure to stand and speak in the first reading of the Aquaculture Legislation Amendment Bill number 3. And I must concede that the previous speakers have certainly canvassed the subject very well. I shall only take a short call. I certainly look forward to this bill coming to the Select Committee so that we can glean the value out of the Select Committee submissions. But while I am on my feet, Mr Speaker, I want to talk about how enthusiastic this government is in aquaculture, how focused it is around the environmental sustainability, and how aware, looking back, at how impractical some of the other attempts have been to sort out the aquaculture industry. It's probably quite appropriate to see where all this started, Mr Speaker. In the 1970s, a lot of the land-based farms in the Marlborough Sounds were finding the going very tough, and with innovation they saw an opportunity to farm greenlip mussels in the Sounds, and the rest is history. There's a wonderful book called Lines in the Sounds that has been published that celebrates the achievements of aquaculture in the Marlborough Sounds. One point that I would like to make is that we are not necessarily talking about great endless hectares of water space being used to realise the $1 billion. It is quite clear that if the science is done and the water space is identified as being appropriate, that salmon farming could double the financial returns in the Marlborough Sounds by actually reducing the overall areas. But the point that we learnt as a Select Committee over in South Australia was that you must do the science, you must identify the areas, and then you have got to look for a very simple but responsible framework for the sustainable aquaculture to occur. Very exciting opportunities. NIWA are doing very successful research into hāpuka, and their growth rates are very similar to salmon. And with this legislation going through, I see the Minister wants us to report it back on the 27th of April 2011. It should give adequate time for us to test much of the thinking that's in this bill. I know that there has been a lot of candle hours burnt languishing over the details and the complexity of such things as how do we proportion the 20% that is due, the contemporary arrangements around Maori. That has got to have to be looked at, and I'm sure that there are far better solutions in the second generation step forward around aquaculture. So I'm going to leave it there, Mr Speaker. I'm fully in support of this. As the MP for Kaikoura that encompasses the Marlborough Sounds and probably some 1,700 kilometres of coastline, we realise the sensitivities around this legislation, but also the enormous opportunities of harvesting economic gain. So I support this bill to the House.